Okay, all right. Well, that was fun. Thank you.
What do you mean,
It
fun?
was fun. I laughed a lot.
That's my purpose of writing, is to make you laugh.
Well, but they wouldn't be quite as funny if you didn't throw in what you throw in. All right, let me start here. I'm going to talk a little bit, but I'm going to back up and put it in reverse to last night. Beginnings and endings have always frightened me. Both lead to the unknown, both beginnings and endings. And last night, I've been a teacher and speaker for over 30 years, and at the beginning, I'm always terrified a little bit. And so last night I began in terror in my introduction of Robert. And then I listened to the other men introduce each other and say some things about Robert, and I realized that once again the terror of love had seized me. When I leave my parents' house and I'm 100 miles away, I feel a great affection for them. I've always done that. But when I'm there, I feel like a stranger or disconnected, or that I don't belong, or they don't belong. And then when I'm on a plane, I feel this great affection for them. And last night, what I realized was I was doing that again with my friend Robert, is that I didn't want to wait until I was on the plane to articulate the affection and the love that I have for you. And that fear seizes what little eloquence I've been able to provide. I remember I worked with this woman who had been my assistant and co-facilitating with me for 10, 15 years. And I remember she had to leave this event early, and as soon as she walked out the door and shut the door, I told the group how much I loved her. I'll never forget that. As soon as she walked out the door, shut the door, I said to the group, let me tell you how much I love this woman. And so I didn't want to be guilty of that again 15 years later. Let me tell you how much I love you and how much you mean to me. And even that is a poor beginning, but that's where I wanted to start. Energy tends to come when a beginning is fully embraced. To refuse to begin again is one of the worst acts of self-neglect, self-abandonment, and self-aggression. And it demonstrates what I'm going to talk about today, and maybe a couple more times over the course of the week in different ways. Is to refuse to begin again is one of the worst acts of self-neglect, self-abandonment, self-aggression, and demonstrates deep passivity. There's an old Irish proverb that says, a good beginning is half the work. A good beginning is half the work. I've said to a lot of folks about relationships and work situations, if it doesn't begin well, chances are the middle won't be too good, and the ending damn sure won't be. If the beginning doesn't start well, the middle probably won't be well, and the ending damn sure won't be. So Passivity is a subject that I thought a little bit about over the last year and a half. I've given a couple of talks about it. I thought I'd bring that here this week. It's a subject that has not been written about much. It's not been discussed much. When I was doing research on it, the only thing that I could find was 3 Freudian academic texts. If you have not been in pain lately and would like to read those, mine was debating a sharp stick in my eye or reading Freudian academic texts. But I will give you the reference if you've had a happy life. These guys just can't write worth a shit. But so I tried to translate some of this into language that would work for me, because I realized a year and a half ago, maybe 2 now, that I am a very passive man. A very passive man. And one of the greatest tricks a passive person plays on themselves is to say, look how busy I am. I'm going to say that again. One of the greatest tricks the passive person plays on himself or herself is, but look how busy I am. How can you identify me as passive? How can you call yourself passive? Look how busy you are. Look how much you work. Look how hard you work. Look how much you're gone all the time. Guy said to me, look, how can you tell me I'm passive? I work 80 hours a week. And I said, let me call your son and ask him if he knows who you are. He said, well, he wouldn't really know me. I said, no, you're very active in your professional life, but very passive as a father. So today, while you may not be identifying yourself as a passive person in general, maybe look at the areas specifically which you might be affected by this psychological, emotional, and spiritual condition. One part of the story of Iron John is the guy has to go to the pond and dip out that lake. Remember that? I won't tell the story. The storytellers will tell the story, but I remember in 1981 when the interview came out with Kit Carson about Robert, and a buddy of mine said, you ought to read this. I think you're really going to enjoy it and find it very useful. And I read it, and one of the things that stood out was that grief was a major way into one's masculinity, into one's maturity, into one's adulthood. And I remember as soon as I read that thinking to myself, now that's a good idea. And as Emerson said, you ask for a new idea and you haven't used the last one yet. And that was a case in point where intellectually I understood, but emotionally I was too passive to proceed. Does that make sense? I was just too passive to proceed. So I put it on hold for about 5 years, filed it away, and then life forced me to proceed. But the passivity in which I carried then and still carry now is still somewhat of a bane of my existence. What is passivity? Let me give you a couple of definitions for it. It is an offense of omission, not commission. It's why it's been overlooked and very little attention has been paid to it. But here's the definition that I use and work with that seems to work for some folks as well. Passivity is the compulsion to pursue that which we say we do not want. Passivity is the psychological, emotional, and spiritual condition that compels us to pursue that which we say we do not want. So the person will say to me, I want to be a writer, I want to be a writer, I want with all my heart and soul to be a writer. And I say, let's look at how you organize your life. And their life is organized in such a way that it's impossible for them to write. You see? I have this buddy of mine, every time I have a book come out, he'll call me and he'll say, you know, I could write a book. He said, don't you think I could write a book? I go, I know you could write a book. You have some incredible stories to tell. You really think I could write a book? I know you could write a book. Why don't you write a book? You know what? I think I will. What is he hooked on? Not writing his book. He's hooked on it as thoroughly as I am on alcohol. As thoroughly as you were on sex. Talking to the couple last night. Thoroughly. What is he hooked on? He's hooked on me telling him that he could write a book.
That's it.
Yeah. He's addicted to that part. He loves that part. Okay? So I'm going to say it again. The compulsion to pursue that which we say we do not want. Okay? So a client will come into a therapist and say, I want to work on my marriage. I've read books on marriage. We've gone to marital workshops. And then I ask, would you like to work on your passivity in your marriage? No. I'd rather work on my marriage. Because that'll make me look busy. That'll make me look committed. That'll make me look interested. But I don't want to work on my passivity in my marriage. And the best example happened a few months ago where this guy comes in. He says, I want you to tell me how I can be more intimate and connected to my wife at this point in my life. I'm retired, and what I want more than anything else in the world is for us to be close, especially physically close, tactically close. I want us to touch. I want us to hold hands. I want us to cuddle at night. I want us to spoon. Yes, I want us to make love, but it's more than that. I want to be engaged with her physically and tactically in a way that I have not been as a man or as a husband. I said, how's that going? He said, not too well. I said, well, give me an example of how you convey this to her. He said, well, take the other night. Every night she goes in, she lays down on the couch, she watches television till she goes sound asleep. Every night it's the same thing. So before coming here, I went in and I stood in front of the television and I said, why are you watching this piece of shit? There's nothing on this thing worth seeing. You come in here every night, you lay down on the couch, and you watch television until you go to sleep. Why don't you get up and let's go get in bed and cuddle? I said, how's that working for you? He said, not too well. I said, out of curiosity, what'd she say? She said, would you get out of the way? And I said, well, maybe, I don't know these things, but maybe you're addicted to going in there mad, pissed off, abandoned, and rejected, and alone. Because that's what you know more than you know how to be physically intimate. Maybe that's what you're hooked on. Maybe that's what you're addicted to. Maybe that's what you're compelled to pursue, is the loneliness of one person in a king-size bed. and that maybe we should work on the passivity, the compulsion to pursue that which we say we do not want. Passivity is the state of consciousness that says, I'll wait forever and I'll suffer forever until you bring back to me blank. Passivity is the state of consciousness that says, I'll wait forever and I'll suffer forever until you bring back to me. Fill in the blank for us, please. Hope, trust, safety. What? What? Cooperation. What? A dead squirrel. You from Alabama? Yeah. Seen any dead squirrels lately? I'm just going to wait here till you bring me one. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I like that, you know. Somebody else. What? What I feel entitled to. I'm going to wait here and suffer here till you bring me what I'm entitled to. Somebody else?
1,000 gifts we received in the womb.
1,000 gifts we received in the womb. Till you bring that back to me, I'll just stay here and wait and suffer. Somebody else? Yes.
The golden ball, John, the golden ball.
The golden ball. The golden ball. What?
My aliveness.
My aliveness.
My spark and excitement.
My spark and excitement. The golden ball.
The golden ball.
Love.
Love. Till you fully appreciate me.
Whoa, that's a life sentence, isn't it?
Wow, that's a good one, bud. That's a good one. Passivity is the state, I lost blank, and I'm going to wait until it finds me, or it is returned to me, but I'm not going looking for it. Because I'm passive. Haven't you been listening? You're not listening to my lectures anymore? Because I'm passive. I'm on a wait because I lost something. And I'm going to stay here until it's returned to me. I'm not going to look for it. Rilke, sometimes a man stands up during supper and walks outdoors and keeps on walking because of a church that stands somewhere in the east. And his children say blessings on him as if he were dead. And other men stay inside with the dishes and the glasses and dies there. And forces his children to go far out into the world to find that same church which he forgot. Some men stand up. Passive men, when the line stays inside with the dishes and the glasses. First time I read that poem translated by Robert of Rilke's, I thought of the little whiskey glasses that my dad would drink out of. He stayed inside with the dishes and glasses and died there.
And what?
Died there. So what have you lost? And you've been waiting for it to come back. What was taken? Back when I used to be a little bit more physically active in my therapy practice and in my workshops, somebody would say what they'd lost or what was taken from it, and I'd have them put it in a pillow or an object, and I'd take it from them and I'd walk across the room with it. And I'd say, how does it feel to be without this? How does it feel to have lived without this for so long? What's that like in your body? And they would describe it, and very often they'd cry or they'd get angry. And then I'd say, what have you done to try to get it back? And they would say, well, I meditated, but it wouldn't come back. I prayed, but it didn't come back. Right? One of Robert's phrases, I bathed it in the white light of the heart chakra.
It worked.
And it didn't come back. And I'd say, in all seriousness by this time, I'd say, what do you think it's going to take to get it back? And sometimes that whole exercise would take 15 to 30 minutes before the person would say, I guess I'm going to have to walk over there and take it back. And then they would come to the other side of the room that I was on, and they would take it like they were just going to be able to take it back. And when I would hold on to it tightly and put up a struggle, again, there was this next level of confusion of why aren't you just going to give it back to me? Because it was taken with a struggle. It has to be taken back with a struggle. You can't just say, John, give me back this thing that my dad took from me 45 years ago. And I go, okay, here, fine. No, you're going to have to struggle with that. You're going to have to fight for it. The psychoanalyst Erik Erikson said, people want to be users of life, and this urge to act on the environment and to affect movement and change is universal. One of the most basic needs of the human race is activeness. To tackle life, to make human contact, to experience vivid emotions, and to exercise will and skills are prime desires. This basic act and urge and desire he's describing is minimal at best in the passive person. Is minimal at best in the passive person. Do I dare disturb the universe? Says Eliot in the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. Do I dare? And do I dare disturb the universe? Passivity is having something done to you or for you rather than being the agent in the doing. Is that passivity is having something done to you or for you rather than being the agent in doing.
Is that like marrying an active person?
Yeah, being acted upon always, being moved. You're not the center of, or the locus of control. People are moving you around. This happens in childhood. Somebody asked me, what's the definition of childhood? I said, choicelessness. They said, what do you mean? I said, you're going to eat this food, you're going to wear these clothes, you're going to this school, you're going to this church, you're going on this vacation. Okay? And when that is perpetually engaged, then the women we're with or the lovers we're with or the jobs that we choose, we feel that we're not the locus of control, that we're constantly being acted upon, being moved like children from this place to that place. Now, I want to be clear, this passivity that I'll be discussing this week is not shyness, it's not laziness, it's not apathy. It's none of those things. Believe it or not, tons of books have been written about all those subjects. And it's not the passive resistance of Martin Luther King or Gandhi. And it's not the passivity found in Taoism. This is a passivity that is plaguing many individuals, myself included, and the culture as a whole.
the culture as a whole. Now I'm going to stop and pause there for a minute. I have a few more minutes left, but I'd like to do the better part of this and ask you what you're thinking or questions about it or comments. Yes, sir.
Yeah, what was resonating in me is I truly believe it's not my fault.
It's truly believe what?
It's not my fault. And until I can get past that, nothing ever changed. Because in my core, I believed that it's not my fault. And that gave me great latitude to blame everybody else, to not do anything, to drink myself half to death, to do everything that they gave me, because it wasn't my fault.
Oh, good.
And it truly wasn't. You're born
Yeah.
in a family where there is, my father was in a mental hospital for years and almost killed me I had all the reasons to know that it wasn't my fault. But I went to a treatment center and there was a sign saying, it is debatable who's responsible for you being here, but you are totally responsible for leaving here.
That's very good.
And that changed my life.
Now, let me just say that the passive person, one of the reasons why I could not begin the dipping out of the pond in 1981 is the same reason that anger and grief work both are very difficult to do for anybody, and that is the passive person holds no one accountable. The passive person holds no one or no thing accountable.
I don't get that.
Does a passive person maybe blame someone?
Yeah, the passive person is full of blame or self-recrimination, but will not exercise or engage in the activity of holding accountable.
Yeah,
Because, what,
that's right.
yeah?
Well, I'm just thinking about, I come from, I don't know, a couple hundred years of pacifist background, and I've been looking at that for a while, and how there's a toxic shadow of the pacifist commitment. It's like your idea of this commitment to what you don't want. You don't want war. You don't want aggression. But then it just becomes a habit, right? And you can't hold anyone accountable. That would be aggressive.
Right, that's right.
You see?
Or assertive.
Or
Yeah,
assertive.
that's right. That's right.
And so you're being a good person, but the only one that's getting killed is you.
That's right. Self-aggression is what ends up
Yeah.
when accountability is not engaged. So we turn it back on ourselves. Many of you, or some of you, know that I've written a lot and done a lot about anger work. And over the years, until it is changed, 99% of the people asked will say, when asked, who are you the most angry at?
Yeah.
See, that is so self-destructive and such a self-perpetrating and perpetuating act of passivity. Now look at my fingers again. I'm even doing it without thinking about it. The anger just keeps going back in me and going back in me. Instead of going up and out, it goes back in me. Somebody else, thoughts, questions, comments? Yes, sir.
It makes me reflect on my answer to last night's question, which is, this failure that kept us alive. Because thinking about that overnight, my failure, I think, is not being true to myself, is what I believed. And that goes way back, as you pointed out, to childhood when I might have felt scared or sad, but was told to not feel that way. It was reflected when my mother died when I was 16 and I was unable to shed a tear because I was being the John Wayne strong character who my father wasn't at the time. It was reflected in my moving back home after I graduated college to take care of my alcoholic father. It was reflected in the job I took, not doing the job that I wanted to, that I always thought I wanted to, not following my heart, I thought, we'll say, and instead took the job that people said I should have. And then all those times when I didn't speak, when I felt I should have, when I spoke when I probably shouldn't have, all of those things. And when I thought about that for a long time, I felt resentful and pissed off and cheated out of my dreams. And then more recently, though, I've started to look back at it, and all those things were useful tools at the time. They kept me alive, and I'm here. I'm here in this place, and while if I had followed my dreams and done what I always wanted to do all along the way and didn't care about other people, maybe I'd be in some other wonderful place. But I don't know that for sure. All I know is like that path, as weird and twisted as it was, has brought me here to this place of, really a wonderful thing. And I've got a great job, and I've got a great wife, and I've got a great family, and I'm really comfortable. And now I'm at that age and maybe level of wisdom where I can do those things that I need to do, like come out here or like speak out when I need to speak out and do all those things. So maybe all that's been in preparation. And so I'm not sure if it's even considered a failure anymore. That stuff of not being true to myself, because maybe that's just been my belief and it's been distorted. But in the context of this passivity that you're talking about, I'm not sure. It's like now even that thought about it, this whole idea of like, it does bring in that victimhood. It's like, I should have done, and more on myself than anything. I'm considering myself that failure. I'm not sure. What are your, does that tie into this passivity that you're talking about? And I'm not sure how it does or not.
Well, I don't know either. I know while you were talking, what I was thinking is the person who's passive, who ends up not following their dreams or their passion, becomes the greater narcissist. And the person who does not follow their dreams or their passion due to the passivity, wherever it may come from, is the greater narcissist who sits and waits for the world to FedEx him that which, if he doesn't get, he will make the rest of the world miserable along with himself until he does. By the way, studies show, what little there are of it, that the passive client is the client who gets recommended to other therapists more than anybody except for the borderline. Because passivity pisses people off, including therapists. And so they keep referring them out to other therapists, partly because it also mirrors the therapist's own passivity. Psychotherapy, as it is practiced in this country by many, many, many people, is one of the most passive occupations that one can engage in. Yes, sir.
Comment that childhood is a time of choicelessness, but the child will often make a decision not to do anything except what he or she is told.
Yeah, no, that's right.
So that goes right into the passive and passive aggressive
Right.
that you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir.
I've been thinking along the lines of passivity. I've been really thinking a lot recently about congruency.
About what?
Congruency. Like what is congruency? What does it look like in my life? And in terms of passive, really asking what's the payoff? If I'm saying I want this, but I'm doing this, what's the payoff? What am I really doing? I mean, what's really going on?
And that is what you really want.
That's right.
There.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the other piece of that is I really want to go back to the beginning when you talked about, and you mentioned, you were talking about, did anyone ever say, get up and get on with your life? And there's a piece of that, even after doing the work and doing the therapy, it's almost a Zen, like the Zen quote, Buddhist quote, before enlightenment
Chop wood and carry water.
Carry water. It's the same thing. After doing all the work, you still got to get up, chop wood, and carry water. You still have to. So it's not like that ever ends.
Right,
You still have to pick yourself up whatever the battle is and keep moving. Or we slip back to passivity.
No, that's right, that's right.
John,
Tim? Oh, sorry.
just real quick, the relationship between failure and passivity, I'm thinking that the place of passivity for me is to say, I was failed by the world. I was failed by the music business. They failed me. That's the passive way. And the payoff is, I'm fine. They fucked up.
They're fucked up.
They're fucked up. But if I say, I fucking failed, right, then I get to find out what I really learned there,
Right.
what I got there.
That's an activity and an engagement that many of us just won't do. I say to folks, you know, I let this man take me into bankruptcy. Hear the difference? Instead of, man, he took me right to bankruptcy. I let this man. So yes, he did fail, but the first failure was what? I.
Yeah.
Tim?
If the word passivity is not active,
Right.
I'm wondering where the mechanism is that enchants us to start to blame.
What's the payoff?
Is it, I mean, I know in my own family, it's a family inheritance, for one thing. It's like, hearing my dad say, oh, it's their fault, or whatever.
Well, and this is one reason why, Tim, a lot of passive people reject this notion of accountability, because it sort of smacks of blame. So let me give you an example of what I mean from my own life. Many of you know this from having heard me before, but when I would drink and get drunk, that was a passive behavior that blamed my father's alcoholism and its effects on my life. When I quit drinking, went to therapy, went to AA, I talked about his drunkenness and its impact on my life, and that was accountability. And where the accountability was, there was no real impetus to take a drink. But the responsibility, and this is one reason why I always had mixed feelings about certain 12-step groups, is they kept confusing responsibility and accountability and using the words interchangeably as if they meant the same thing. And they don't. They don't. The accountability is, I'm going to hold you. You wrecked my car by running the red light. You wrecked my car. I'm going to hold you accountable to pay for it. But I'm going to take it to the body shop. See that little silly Alabama example? You wrecked my car. I hope you got insurance. I'm going to hold you accountable for fixing it. But I'm not going to ask you to come get my car, take it to the body shop, and pick it up and return it to me. Okay? In a sense, my old dad, kind of ran into my life, but I got to take my life to the body shop. Okay? But if you hold, and a lot of old-time 12 steps, and I may be stepping on some toes here, will say, no, John, you're both accountable and responsible for your alcoholism, for your abusiveness in your relationships. And I say, well, when you hold accountability in one hand and responsibility in the other hand, they'll turn into a fist and you'll beat the hell out of yourself with it. But if you'll hold responsibility in one hand and accountability
you reach out, then you can do something about it. But the weight of both at the same time is a burden that most men do not have enough energy to carry. Okay? Let me make a couple of other comments, and then we'll go into our morning time to let the old coffee out and the new coffee in. I'm going to give you a couple of types of passivity in closing. If I have the opportunity, which I guess I will at some point, I'll do a workshop. If I have the opportunity, which I guess I will at some point, I'll do a workshop or a talk or something on the solutions to passivity, now that I've sort of stated the problem, but I'm going to give you 2 or 3 different kinds. I've identified 8 kinds of passivity, but I'm going to give you 2 or 3 now. One of my favorite ones is what's called alibi passivity. Alibi passivity. And it goes like this. I've always wanted to play basketball, but my legs are too short. I would like to go back to school, but I'm too old. You see where I'm going with this? This is called alibi passivity. Right? I would love to play the guitar, but my fingers are just too thick and short. Every time I would hear that one over the years, I'd think about the guy who didn't have hands, and he played the guitar with his feet. Remember that guy? Play the hell out of that guitar with his feet. And then I'd hear this guy say, but, I just have these big old meaty fingers. And they just, you need to see that video of that guy, Somebody else, give me your alibi passivity, please. I'm too busy. Great one. Somebody else? I might fail. Somebody else? I'm just not musical. Yeah. I might succeed. Somebody else is going to do it. And that right there, the passive person lives their lives vicariously through others. One of the things that I always admired about his writing workshops, and sometimes his other workshops, Robert's, is people would come to hear him read poetry, and he would ask them to write a poem. Or they'd come to hear a story, and he had asked them to tell one. See? And in this culture, vicarious living, is at its height. I mean, you're talking about your tradition. Everybody used to be storytellers in the South. Everybody told stories in the South. There was no television, no radio. I'm telling you, and again, I can speak mostly from my culture. I mean, nearly everybody knew how to play a musical instrument.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
A banjo, a guitar, or they would sing, or drums, or washboards, It was so common, I mean, for families to get together like that, the vicarious living, right? So alibi passivity. Anybody else want to say one that they got before I move on? Yeah.
Oh, my dad couldn't do that, so I can't.
All right. My family's always been bad at math. I can't expect to do math. Why is that? Because my grandfather couldn't do math. God damn, leave me alone. Balance my checkbook for me, baby. Why? Because my granddaddy couldn't balance his checkbook. My memory's just not that good. Yeah. Alibi. Oh, yeah. Teacher said I wasn't college material. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, put that out there. You know it. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I might fail.
It's beautiful to hear because I think we're in a time a lot of times where we don't think that blessings and curses are real. You know, that it's a bunch of poo-poo, but you have somebody say something like that to you, that's a goddamn curse.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Verbal passivity. Here's another one. It is plaguing our country. It is plaguing our schools. Verbal passivity. Remember Bush?
No. Ah!
When he met Nelson Mandela, the interviewer asked him, "Sir, how was it to meet Nelson Mandela?" He said, "Awesome." Verbal passivity. How are you feeling today? Cool. Verbal passivity. How's that divorce going? Well, it is what it is.
Tell us that there's a new phrase. It's all good.
It's all good.
What about that one?
Yeah, verbal passivity. Verbal passivity. Our country is just falling into it, you know. Words like cool, awesome, whatever, fine. That's an afternoon conversation right there. You know? What? What's that?
Often the question doesn't actually
Want the answer? Verbal passive.
this country from the UK, but how are you doing? Never actually wants the long answer about how I'm really doing. Don't tell me. Have a nice day.
One of the things about these conferences is a direct counter-offensive to verbal passivity. I noticed last night that when I'm at these, my vocabulary increases, and I use language better. Not well, but better. Yes, sir.
When I worked with the young men, the most passive young men wouldn't even say a word. It'd be, yeah.
That's right.
I will say to someone, thank you for helping me, and they'll say, no problem.
No problem. Yeah.
I have a question. Is it the short answer nature of this, or is it the sort of neutral tone and manner of this?
All the above, but it's a lack of engagement, you know. And again, part of this is if you have tendencies towards passivity and then you're around it constantly, it's self-perpetuating. And so literally, you know, now we fall into it so easily, you know, that we don't even know we're doing it. You know,
Disengaged.
yeah. Well, we don't talk like adults, basically, is what it comes down to. We're still, like Tim was saying, adolescent. When somebody says, how you doing, and we go, fine, we might as well just be going,
Yeah.
you know. There's no engagement of the energy in that. You know, now the passive person, interestingly enough, is always exhausted. Always exhausted. Because passivity is actually a numbing, exhausting non-enterprise.
Whereas, you're suggesting that we try to give active answers?
Right.
Here?
Like last night when the question was asked and Doug was saying, these are some of the best answers I've ever heard at one of these. That's how I felt too. But energy was building. in direct proportion to our engagement of the question.
So it's like the passivity itself, like consume energy that could be used in worthwhile enterprise.
Right, exactly. So going back to, and I'm going to close and stuff, going back to that good beginning, again, last night, what I saw in myself at the beginning was passivity that is rooted to some degree in terror and fear and regression. One of the things I'll talk about a little bit at some point is regression and how it relates to passivity. But I feel like, I was really honored to begin this morning, and I feel more energized than I did last night, and I hope this was useful to you on some level, and I would be glad to entertain any conversations or questions during breaks or times out here alone, and I'll carry this a step further at some future time. So thank you very much for this morning.
Thank you, man.
Thank you. Okay? Thank you. Thank you.
Can I have a break now?
Yeah, should we take a break now?
Yeah.
Okay. A 15-minute break?
15-minute break, and when we come back, we'll have a story.
Yeah.